Hello and welcome to the New Gig podcast. I'm your host, Glen Hodgson, and today I'm delighted to be joined by investor, thought leader, teacher, and author, Diane Mulcahy. How are you doing, Diane?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So for the viewers and listeners who maybe are not aware, it would be great to hear a little bit about your background, but also how you got into this thing that we're calling the platform economy, the gig economy.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And I think that I really started thinking about the gig economy when I had my first job out of college, actually. I took a very typical full-time job at a consulting firm.
Yeah.
And when I started, I thought, I really miss the lifestyle that I had at college, taking all different kinds of classes, having different projects to work on, having control of my own schedule, really just being accountable for results versus, FaceTime and politics. So right from the beginning of my career, unfortunately, because I couldn't do anything about it, I thought I wanted to work differently. It
Yeah.
took a while for me to be able to execute that and to be able to build a portfolio of interesting work and to gain more control over my professional life.
Yeah.
But the nub of the idea started with my first job.
Excellent. So it's been an early adopter from the beginning there, Diane, in terms of the lifestyle, the balance, and also the this idea of being able to deliver impact and deliver value to organizations as well, which is something that personally I can empathize with, but also a lot of people who've sort of made the leap, if you will, into the into this sector say very similar things about why they want to do this.
Yes, I mean, one of the big drivers when I've done research and interviews with independent workers, one of the major drivers is increasing the autonomy and the control that they have
Yeah.
over their professional and personal lives, really.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and by moving into independent work, they can focus on picking the projects that they're interested in,
Mm,
delivering that value and the results while retaining the control and flexibility that most people really enjoy having.
mm. And these are great points that you raised there, Diane, because there is still kind of this negative viewpoint that people are trying to slack off. They're trying to choose this lifestyle as a way that they can just hang around on beaches for 6 months of the year and not really have to work. Whereas the real life testimonies is people working as hard, if not harder, than in traditional 9 to 5 roles, but because they want to sort of deliver and they're driven to be able to want to do this.
Well, just like in the traditional jobs economy, there's a range of how
Right.
people choose to work. And I think it's really no different in the gig economy. There are people, they're called digital nomads, that
Mm,
choose to structure a work life where they can travel and work. Some people still work a lot while they're living that lifestyle. Other people have organized their life so they're able to
mm,
benefit from passive income streams as well as, real-time active work that
mm.
we think about in a regular job. So it really does vary in the gig economy. I would say for the majority of people that are in the gig economy and working independently, they are working hard,
Yeah.
but maybe they're working hard in a way that looks different than a steady 9 to 5 job.
Mm,
When I was doing interviews for my book, a number of independent workers told me about schedules that looked like, I work really hard during the year in
mm.
order to be able to meet my income goals and not work as hard during the summer where I like to spend more time with my family.
Yeah.
Or I work really hard during the year, but I really like to take, several weeks off around the holidays and
Mm,
spend that time with family. So I think what's amazing is that you can structure a professional life that does suit whatever schedule you want to pursue. And it doesn't
yeah.
have to fit in this standard structure of a 5 day,
Mm,
all day, every day work week.
yeah. And how does the feedback and the testimonials that you've been receiving from individuals working within the platform economy? What is the broad span of professions and activities that people are getting involved in?
Yeah, I mean, the interviews that I've had and the people that I talk to, it's incredibly broad. And I know that maybe for many listeners, when they think about the gig economy or the platform economy, they immediately think about Uber or food delivery services.
Yeah.
And those are definitely a part of the platform or gig economy, but also included in that are professional services.
Yeah.
So, I've really talked to and worked with people across industries. They could be independent consultants that have
Mm.
MBAs. They could be lawyers who work on a contract basis, interim finance professionals that are highly
Yes.
skilled at what they do, as well as graphic designers, virtual assistants,
Mm.
editors, copywriters, graphic designers. I mean, the gig economy is incredibly broad and really does cross every sector, industry, education level, income level that you can think of.
Yeah.
It's very similar in that way to the jobs economy. It's incredibly broad.
Exactly. And I think that one of the things that we're seeing at the moment is people, and particularly in the media, trying to pigeonhole this as something kind of linked to precarious employment, linked to kind of less control, and kind of a slave to algorithms and low pay, when probably the reality is quite the opposite of what the negative narratives are in the media streams.
Well, I think again, it's a spectrum. It
Mm.
really is just like the jobs economy. Just like there are amazing jobs that pay really well and give you a lot of benefits and autonomy, there are also jobs that I think we can all agree seem pretty terrible to
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
Economy, it's the same thing. If you're a highly skilled professional, your work life as an independent worker looks very different than somebody who has very limited.
Yeah.
Um, I think the better comparison is to take the person who has lower skills and is working in the gig economy and look at their best alternatives in the jobs economy.
Yeah.
So the way that the example that I like to draw upon is an Uber driver who maybe their next best alternative is a part-time job in
Yep.
a retail establishment or a fast food restaurant. And in that case, their economic situation is similar in the sense that they're not well paid.
Mm.
They don't have a lot of stability and certainty in the hours that they have every week.
Mm.
And they don't have access to benefits, at least here in the US.
Right.
The difference is for the person who's working independently, they do have control over their schedule, so they can manage their personal lives more
Yes.
easily, and they can also take on additional work.
Mm.
Because they control their schedule, they can also control their income to a greater extent.
Mm.
Instead of waiting for a boss to give them hours every
Yep.
week, and then risking being sent home early if it's not busy, they can control, okay, I want to earn more money this week, so I'm going to work more hours.
Yeah.
But I think it is important to acknowledge that it really is a systemic problem in our economy and in our society that we
Right.
have these jobs or work situations that really are very poorly paid and
Mm.
don't offer the protections that really should be accessible to all workers, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you've talked a little bit about the individuals and how they can access the gig and the platform economy. But what should companies and organizations be doing, Diane? How should they be adapting? How should they be trying to harness the opportunities and the efficiency gains from the platform and the gig economy?
Right. Well, I think we have come a long way in this past year as a result of the pandemic because companies were slow to adopt to new ways of working. They
Mm.
have been slow to think about hiring people on a contract basis as part of the regular work that they do. And they've been slow to restructure work into projects and tasks and assignments versus full-time jobs.
Mm.
The pandemic has really forced companies to change the way they think about and structure work at a very fundamental level. The fact that everybody had to go remote and had
Yeah.
to be managed remotely
Mm.
really forced companies to implement change. And I think there is momentum around that change. So I think even as the lockdowns ease and as companies come back to what is likely to be a hybrid model,
Yep.
um, I do think there will be more openness to working with independent workers and workers who aren't in the office and therefore can be geographically dispersed.
Yep.
And therefore, it's easier to think about having those workers either as employees or as contractors, because the
Mm.
companies already have the management systems, the data systems, the security systems all set up. That's
Yeah.
already happened. So hopefully it's become much easier and there's less friction to
Yeah.
hiring independent workers.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of the time has been is now because it's been moved forward by the pandemic. I mean, I hate to say the benefits of the pandemic because that would be wrong and also very crass of me to do so. But the fact that the world of work has changed and new things have been brought into focus means that we're ready, and the mindsets of individuals working in organizations are maybe more open to this new form of work and the future of work.
I think it has been a big shift in mindsets, because nobody had a choice. I mean, this
Yeah.
change was really forced on everybody, so we all had to adapt. And, they say it takes 3 months to form a new habit. We're well beyond that. I mean, this is the new norm now. And this is the inertia and the status quo that we have to
Yeah.
overcome. I mean,
Yeah.
it'll be very interesting to see what it's like to try to get people back to the office. I mean, like everything, right? Some people really prefer working in the office, but
Yeah.
what all the surveys that I've seen suggest is that it's a minority of the workforce that really wants to be back, certainly full time. I think more people want to be back some of the time that they
Mm.
control.
Yeah, yeah, it's more of a flexible model, and I think that the hybrid model as well. This seems to be something that brings its own challenges as well. That the mindsets, but also the organizational structures, perhaps need to be able to be updated and adaptable to to the new normal, which is not going back to how it was in February 2020.
That's absolutely true. So, and companies aren't done adapting yet. Most companies that I've spoken with have not really dealt with their commercial office space
Right.
situation, right?
Yeah.
So, as lease and as negotiations take place, companies will find themselves in a different position. And even though they've adapted to remote work, companies still need to think about a proactive strategy to modify how they identify and recruit talent, and one
Mm.
that is much more geographically broad than
Yes.
perhaps they're used to. I really think here in the US, the tech companies are leading the way with that, and already in a very proactive way declaring that their workforce is going to be primarily remote. And so
Yeah.
they're already recruiting and onboarding and hiring people on that basis.
Yeah.
So they're really the ones that are winning the talent war right now.
Mm. Mm. And this is it. It's the moving on of the talent, and the organizations will usually follow the talent, but also follow the money. And I know that you have your venture capital hat on as well, and it would be great to hear from you from a kind of a VC perspective. Where is the interest in the platform economy heading? What's the sort of the aspects that are coming up?
Yeah, that's such a broad question. What I would say is for many VC firms that I talk to, they have some kind of investment roadmap around the future of work or the future of labor. And that can look like investing in labor platforms,
Right.
like what we've been discussing. But it also includes a lot of other startups that are addressing real pain points for
Mm.
people and companies that are working independently. So if you think about, I don't know if you've seen that graphic where they have the old classifieds and then, all the startups that have emerged to
Yeah.
kind of disrupt and disaggregate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can kind of imagine the same graphic for the back office or the HR department of a
Okay.
company.
Yeah.
And certainly for independent workers, there are issues around getting paid consistently and having good platforms for
Mm,
onboarding and for payments and for direct deposits, for accessing benefits, for making sure that they're able to save and pay their taxes, a lot of fintech issues.
yeah.
So I think, it's looking at the labor platforms, but then it's also broadening out and saying, what are the issues that both independent workers and companies now have when they bring on independent workers, and how are startups emerging to solve those problems? So the
Yeah.
investment thesis is really incredibly broad.
Mm, that's really interesting because what we're seeing, certainly from the research that we've been doing, platform workers complaining about two main things. One is that sort of the parallel universe of financial services that, to get a credit card, to get a loan for an apartment, they look at your credit history. It's like, well, hang on, you don't have a fixed salary. What's going on? So the way in which this needs to be adapted, but also insurance as well, sort of bringing individuals themselves up to the same level as a traditional economy worker, and the people who are actually sort of buying, selling, and sharing things, who want the insurance to give them a bit more peace of mind. So this is more of a mainstream as opposed to a side stream in terms of activity.
And that is, those are two industries, financial services and insurance, which have been fairly slow and conservative in terms of
Mm,
adapting to these new workers and offering them products and solutions. There is a whole category of insure tech companies that are moving into that space,
right.
but they're moving in cautiously. I mean, insurance as an industry is by its nature conservative. And
Yes.
the more data and the more experience they have, the better they can
Yeah.
kind of craft an offering and price it. But in the meantime, there is kind of unmet demand for these products from workers. So hopefully that will continue to evolve at an accelerated pace as more people work this way.
So it's leading from the front, and hopefully that the organizations and institutions follow suit within this angle there. So if we look sort of again, really broad question, Diane, and I'm sorry for this, but also this gives you the scope. But when we're looking about the future of the platform economy, what would your, if I ask you to get the crystal ball out, which way would you think it's heading, both from a European perspective and a US perspective? Because you folks are a little bit further ahead and have gone further down this path.
Well, my prediction would be that it's heading towards continued growth
Yeah,
and becoming a much more mainstream way of working. One of the things that the pandemic also forced, at least here in the US, where workers who work independently are, I would say, more penalized than workers in Europe, in the sense that they have a harder time accessing benefits and rights and
yeah,
protections that
yeah,
are only given to employees. And what we saw here in the US is, for example, independent workers were for the first time able to get unemployment insurance. That, I'm using
right,
that term loosely, it's really income protection.
yeah,
Um, and I think it proved how quickly we can offer
yeah,
solutions like that to workers, to offer them that safety net and protection.
yeah,
And I think now that we have offered workers those protections, I think it will be very hard to walk back from that.
mm,
So my expectation is that the gig economy will continue to grow. People will continue to choose to work independently, to work remotely, and that industries like what we were talking about, financial services and
yeah,
insurance, as well as policy, will really have no choice but to catch up
yes,
and to
yeah.
support this reality of the new way that people are working and
Mm.
choosing to work.
Excellent. And we here in Europe, we have the European Commission and the European Parliament, other the European institutions now looking at the framework for gig workers, workers' rights, workers' protections, linking in with the Digital Services Act as well. What would be sort of the key elements you would be saying to the European Commission, European Parliament, if you had them in front of you now, in terms of what to do and also equally importantly, what not to do in terms of creating the framework for this growing sector?
Such a provocative question. And I'm a visiting fellow at Bruegel working on a future of work project, and that really is the question. I think at the highest level, what I would say to if I had the European Commission in front of me is to really focus on solutions that extend the benefits, rights, and protections that we already give to employees to all workers. I
Mm,
mean, the thought experiment that I would suggest they undertake is if if we were designing a labor market from scratch
yeah.
today, I don't think we would come up with a system where employees are the only worker that has access to benefits, rights, and protections. It
Mm,
just doesn't make sense given the variety of ways that people either must work or choose to work, whether
yeah.
it's part-time, independently, remote, whatever. So I think if we were designing a labor market today, we would say, okay, for anybody who works, what do we want to give them in terms of rights, protection,
Yeah.
and benefits? And that's the mindset to get into as we're setting policies for this new gig economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds like a great starting point, and here to that in terms of making sure the rights, responsibilities, and the safety nets are all in place, so that the expansion of the platform and gig economy can go hand in hand with the necessary protections. So, Diane, I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your inputs into this really important topic, which is not going to go away anyways anytime soon. So thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.